The siege begins. Station Commander Zara 9 watched the massive shadow fall across Nexus Prime's main viewport as the first Void Reaper dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace. Her forearms moved quickly across the command console, activating emergency protocols that she had hoped never to use. The trading station, home to over 50,000 beings from across the galaxy, had always been considered neutral territory. Until today. Status report, Zara 9 commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 3 decades managing the galaxy's largest commercial hub. The bridge crew, a mix of different species from the Galactic Council, worked frantically at their stations. Lieutenant Vex, a blue-skinned Altarian with large black eyes, looked up from his scanner with obvious fear. Commander, we have 12 Void Reaper ships surrounding us. 3 dreadnoughts, 6 heavy cruisers, and 3 destroyer escorts. They're jamming our long-range communications. Security Chief Korath, a massive reptilian Saran, growled low in his throat. Their weapon. Signatures are active. They mean business this time. His clawed hands gripped his weapon harness as he spoke. The Void Reapers had been raiding outer colonies for months, but never had they been bold enough to attack a major trading station. The main screen flickered as an incoming transmission forced its way through their communication systems. A figure appeared, tall and thin with pale gray skin and eyes like burning coals. General Vorth of the Void Reapers smiled coldly at them through the screen. Station Commander. Vorth's voice was smooth but filled with menace. I am General Vorth of the Void Reaper fleet. You will surrender your station and all its resources immediately. Your people will be processed for slavery, and your technology will serve the Reaper cause. Zara 9 stood tall, all 4 of her arms crossed defiantly. This is neutral space, General. Nexus Prime operates under Galactic Council protection. Your attack here violates every treaty in known space. Vorth laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. The Galactic Council? They are too busy protecting their core worlds to care about a single trading station. You have 1 hour to consider surrender. After that, we will take what we want by force. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Zara 9 turned to her communications officer, a young Centaurian named Pip with silver hair and pointed ears. Send emergency signals to every Council world within 50 light years. Tell them we need immediate assistance. For the next 30 minutes, responses came back one by one. The Altarian Republic was fighting Void Reaper raids on 3 of their agricultural worlds. The Soran Defense Force was protecting their industrial colonies near the galactic core. The Centaurian fleet was engaged in deep space patrol, too far away to respond in time. It's the same story everywhere, Communications Officer Pip reported sadly. The Void Reapers have coordinated attacks across 6 sectors. Everyone is fighting for their own survival. Chief Engineer Bronx, a stocky humanoid with mechanical implants covering half his body, slammed his metal fist on his console. 50 years of peace, and now this. The Council grew soft, scattered their forces too thin. Zara 9 walked to the main viewport, looking out at the enemy ships that seemed to block out the stars themselves. Nexus Prime had always been a symbol of hope, a place where different species came together to trade, learn, and build relationships. Now it might become the site of the galaxy's greatest tragedy. Commander, Lieutenant Vex called out urgently. The Void Reapers are launching landing craft. Looks like they're not waiting for our answer. On the scanner, dozens of assault shuttles poured from the enemy ships like angry insects. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city block. And Nexus Prime's defensive systems were designed for protection against pirates and smugglers, not a full military assault. All security teams to defensive positions, Zara 9 ordered. Seal the civilian sectors and evacuate non-essential personnel to the emergency shelters. Security Chief Korth checked his weapon one more time. "Commander, we have maybe 300 security officers against thousands of Reaper soldiers. Our weapons are designed for crowd control, not warfare." "I know the odds, old friend," Saranine replied, placing one of her hands on the Soren's massive shoulder. "But we don't abandon our people. Send one more message on all emergency frequencies. Tell anyone listening that Nexus Prime makes its last stand today." The first explosions shook the station as Void Reaper cutting beams began slicing through the outer hall. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the corridors as thousands of civilians ran for the shelters. Families clutched each other tightly, shopkeepers abandoned their stores, and visiting traders grabbed whatever belongings they could carry. In the command center, tactical displays showed the enemy's progress. The Void Reapers were systematic and ruthless, cutting through defensive barriers like they were made of paper. Within an hour, they would reach the main civilian areas. "Any response to our emergency transmission?" Saranine asked, though she already knew the answer. Pip shook his head sadly. "Nothing, Commander. We're truly alone." The lights flickered as another explosion rocked the station. Through the viewport, the enemy ships hung in space like dark omens, their weapons charging for the final assault. Saranine closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the peaceful years when Nexus Prime had been a beacon of hope in the galaxy. "If this is our end," she said quietly, "then we face it with honor. All hands, prepare for final defense." The forgotten legends deep in the archives of Nexus Prime. Professor Kelvin of the Altarian Science Institute worked frantically through ancient data files while explosions echoed through the station's corridors. The elderly blue-skinned scholar had spent his entire career studying the legends and myths of the galaxy's outer rim, and now, in what might be their final hour, he was chasing one last desperate hope. "Computer, search all historical databases for references to Sol System, or humans," he commanded, his large black eyes scanning through holographic displays that floated around his workstation. His assistant, a young Centaurian graduate student named Lyra, looked up from her own research terminal with confusion. "Professor, shouldn't we be evacuating to the shelters? The Void Reapers have breached the outer sections." Kelvin continued his search without looking up. "There are stories, Lyra, old stories that most scholars dismiss as fantasy. Tales of a species called humans from a blue world in an uncharted system. They say these beings were warriors and protectors, but disappeared from known space centuries ago." Another explosion shook the archives, causing several data crystals to fall from their storage units. Lyra steadied herself against her workstation and stared at her professor in disbelief. "Professor, even if such stories were true, how could legends help us now?" "Because," Kelvin said, his voice filled with excitement as data began appearing on his screen. "What if they weren't legends at all? Look at this." The holographic display showed an ancient star chart, its origins dating back over 400 years. In the outer rim of the galaxy, beyond the edge of mapped space, a single system was marked with strange symbols that didn't match any known language. This chart was found in the ruins of an abandoned research station near the galactic edge, Kelvin explained quickly. The symbols roughly translate to "Guardians of the Third Rock" and "Those who watch in silence." Lyra moved closer to examine the chart. "Professor, this could mean anything. Ancient civilizations often created myths about distant stars." Kelvin pulled up another file, this one containing fragments of intercepted communications from deep space exploration vessels. "But look at these reports. Over the past 50 years, at least a dozen ships have reported detecting artificial signals from this region. Signals using mathematical patterns that suggest advanced intelligence." The lights in the archives suddenly went out completely, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. In the distance, They could hear the sound of energy weapons and the shouts of security teams engaging the invading Void Reapers. "We need to get to the communication center," Kelvin said urgently, gathering his data files. "If there's even a small chance that someone in that system might respond to our distress call, we have to try." They ran through corridors filled with smoke and debris, avoiding the sounds of battle as Void Reaper soldiers advanced through the station. The communication center was located in the station's core, one of the most heavily protected areas. But even there, they could feel the vibrations of enemy weapons cutting through the hull. Communications Officer Pip was still at his station when they arrived, sweat beading on his silver hair as he desperately tried to maintain contact with anyone who might help. "Professor Kelvin, what are you doing here?" "I need to send a message." "To these coordinates," Kelvin said, uploading his data to the communication system. "It's a long shot, but we may have missed something in our understanding of galactic history." Pip looked at the star chart with surprise. "Professor, that's deep into uncharted space. Our signals might not even reach that far, and even if they do, the chances of anyone being there to receive them are better than the chances we have right now," Kelvin finished grimly. Commander Zaranine's voice crackled over the intercom system. "All personnel, the Void Reapers have breached the middle sections. We estimate 30 minutes before they reach the civilian shelters." Pip's hands flew over his controls, boosting the transmitter to maximum power. "I'm broadcasting on all frequencies, Professor. What message do you want to send?" Kelvin thought for a moment, then began speaking clearly into the microphone. "This is Professor Kelvin of Nexus Prime Station to anyone in the Sol System. Ancient records suggest your people were once known as guardians and protectors. We are 50,000 civilians under attack by the Void Reaper fleet. If you can hear this message, if you still exist, please help us. The galaxy remembers your legends." The message transmitted into the void of space, carrying with it the hopes of everyone aboard the dying station. Pip monitored the communication, arrays watching for any sign of a response, while Lyra helped Professor Kelvin search for any additional information about the mysterious humans. Minutes passed like hours. The sounds of battle grew closer as security teams fell back toward the core sections. Energy weapons discharged in the corridors outside, and the acrid smell of burned metal filled the air. "Professor," Lyra whispered, "what if the stories are wrong? What if there's nobody out there?" Kelvin continued monitoring his instruments, refusing to give up hope. "Then we tried everything we could, my dear. Sometimes that's all we can do." Suddenly, Pip's console erupted with activity. Lights flashed and alarms beeped as an incoming transmission forced its way through all the interference from the battle. "Professor, I'm receiving a response signal. It's coming from the coordinates you specified." The main communication screen flickered to life, showing a clear image despite the vast distance. A human woman appeared, middle-aged with short brown hair, and wearing a uniform unlike anything in the known galaxy. Her eyes were calm but determined, and when she spoke, her voice carried an authority that somehow reassured everyone who heard it. "Professor Kelvin, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your message, and we're familiar with your situation. We've been monitoring Void Reaper activities for some time now." The communication center fell silent, except for the distant sounds of battle. Professor Kelvin found his voice first. "Captain Chun, are you saying that humans actually exist? That Earth is real?" Captain Chun smiled slightly. "Very real, Professor. We've been watching galactic events from a distance for over 2 centuries, learning about the various species and civilizations. We chose to remain hidden until the right moment." "And is this the right moment?" Kelvin asked desperately. The captain's expression grew serious. "When innocent civilians are threatened by forces like the Void Reapers, it's always the right moment. Help is on the way, Professor. Tell your people to hold on just a little longer." The transmission ended, leaving everyone in the communication center staring at the blank screen in amazement. In the distance, they could still hear the battle raging. But for the first time since the siege began, there was hope. "Did that really just happen?" Lyra whispered. Pip was already working at his console, scanning deep space for any signs of approaching ships. "I'm not detecting anything yet, but if they're as advanced as they seemed..." Professor Kelvin looked at his ancient star charts with new understanding. The legends were true. Somewhere out there, the Guardians were watching and waiting. And now, when we need them most, they're coming home.